Oh, hello everybody, I'm Claire and welcome to my video blog. I'm sorry I've been away for a little while, but there was that week of extreme excitement, which I shall be referring to, and then after that I came down with the flu. I was so exhausted, so forgive me for taking a while to get here, and hi there Mr. Cool Mug, thanks for the encouragement. Now, obviously the excitement I'm referring to is the election of Donald Trump. I did believe that he would win, and I actually put a few quid on at the bookies, which I kind of thought of as a magical act. I actually said so to a friend of mine, and she's a Christian, and so I hope that didn't seem too outlandish a thought for her, that I should be making a magical act of affirmation by putting a few quid on Donald Trump to win. But it paid off, fortunately, and the same as with Brexit. And the thing is, what's really interesting is that we've been hearing so many people in the mainstream media saying, no one expected this, this was completely... And I'm thinking, well, this is obviously... in their world it wasn't expected, but obviously there was an alternate world where it was worked for very hard, and it was hard won, and congratulations to the Donald and to everybody who fought for this. Now, what I really want to draw attention to today is the psychological reactions that people have been having to it. Obviously there's been the kind of mass weep-ins, and the demonstrations and the violence, and this is all based on kind of apprehension, misapprehension, fear and so forth. And I had an episode just a few days after the result came out, which was a little bit like my Brexit experience, because it was very close by, and I went into the fruit and veg shop up the way here, and I bumped into this lady I know who is a member of the Socialist Workers' Party, and we fought side by side on the Stop the Trolleybus campaign, and I'm very happy to say that we won that, but I'd never really expressed any of my feelings about about political matters further afield of the national and international nature. And her being an international communist, obviously she's not very keen on people expressing nationalist ideas. So what happened was, I'm standing there at the fruit and veg, and I'm just choosing, you know, my courgettes and my lemons and everything, and she comes into the shop, and I say, oh, hi there, and she says, oh, hello, and I say, oh, everything alright? Yeah. Oh dear, I shouldn't have said that. You always say the wrong things, don't you? So she said, oh yes, alright, except for what happened on Wednesday. And I was like, oh yeah. So what was that then? She said, oh, and she's starting to get a little bit wondering that I might not quite be on the same page as her. And she says, oh, you don't think that Donald Trump getting elected is something to be bad that happened on Wednesday? And I said, no, I'm really quite pleased. I think it's a relief that we're not going to have that awful warmongering Clinton woman in the White House. What else can you say? And then she said, oh, well, I think that's where we part company. Like, I've known this woman off and on for over 30 years, something like that. And this is your classic leftist, far left, really, reaction. I mean, she's a member of the Socialist Workers' Party, and I don't have anything against her personally. I mean, we've, you know, as I say, we fought on the local transport campaign, and perfectly respect her for that. But it was really interesting the way that leftists they find that you hold one view that it doesn't fit in with their version of reality, and suddenly you're a demonised villain. You can do all that. I've known her done all sorts of things with her in the past, and been to groups, social groups, campaigns, blah blah blah, mutual friends, etc., etc. All perfectly fine. But the moment, whoa, okay, you're a racist, bigot, xenophobe who wants to start World War III. Actually, hang on, just a minute. Whoa, I'm saying, well, you know, I'm really, really relieved. I'm saying to her that Hillary Clinton didn't get in because she was like, you know, guaranteed to start World War III with her Syrian no-fly zone, and then there's all her involvement with ISIS and Saudi Arabia and Islam and the migrant crisis and all this stuff. And then she says, oh yeah, but what about Donald Trump and the Iraq War? And I'm like, okay, right. Trump wasn't, of course, you know, even in politics in 2003. He made one or two off-the-cuff comments, one way or the other, on the Iraq War. He wasn't a big supporter of it. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, was a senator in the upper house of Congress, and she voted for it. But she doesn't seem to be held responsible for any of the outcomes of it. But a couple of chance remarks from Donald Trump, well, it always seems to do it, doesn't it? You have to catch a couple of chance remarks from Donald Trump, and you're trying to pin him down, you know, for eternal damnation. So I just thought it was just utterly funny, because I just could see this coming. When I saw this lady there in the fruit and veg shop, I could just see it coming. It was just like the one at the shop across the way when Brexit happened, except that this time, fortunately, it wasn't the manager of the shop who went for me. But this is the kind of thing that we have to deal with in areas where you have strong white socialist lefty populations. But one of the things that I wanted to add to this was, it seemed appropriate, and I've mentioned before that I used to have quite a deep involvement in New Age things back in the 90s, and kind of the path out of that began with my experience in my book here, Waking the Monkey, which was my experience at a New Age camp in the mid-90s. And what that is about my awakening to the flaws of the collectivism in the New Age cosmology, really, you could say it. And I think it's very interesting that a lot of this stuff that you get in the New Age is actually really based on something which is quite true, but it gets distorted by your classic cultural Marxist type deconstruction. So I thought what I'd do is, I've just pulled up here on my screen, I've got some a few quotes, a few lines from the Starseed Prophecies, which is a New Age tract which was written in the late 70s, and there's various curious synchronicities about it, and it was quite influential back in the day, but I have suspicions about it, because it does seem to be a little bit kind of congruent with all the Aquarian conspiracy stuff that was going on, which you can read about in my blog, which I'll reference below. And what you might call predictive programming. But as I usually try and observe with these when I'm making comments about New Age things, is that they wouldn't work, they wouldn't be so convincing, and they wouldn't influence people so much if it wasn't for the case that they had some truths embedded in them. Now, the starseed prophecies, the starseed transmissions, is like mostly just saying how wonderful everything will be and it will all transform spontaneously and stuff. But I think you can kind of discount that because it kind of sounds a bit effortless, and I'm a bit unconvinced by things that sound completely effortless. But what I find so interesting about this is that about 2/3 of the way through there is a few paragraphs which actually describe what we are experiencing at the moment, and I wonder if this is just coincidence or if this, which is as I read it out, you'll see this is kind of like the key moment of the starseed transmissions. They're talking about the moment of transformation, the singularity, as I would call it, and I've written another blog about that which I shall be putting up shortly and linking. And when I went for my interview at the 100thmonkeyradio.com, which was on about a year ago, one of the gentlemen who interviewed me talked about the moment. What he said, when will be that moment when we will all get it? And well, I think that this might be it. I think that the election of Donald Trump might really be that moment. We thought it was going to be a moment of mass enlightenment, you know, back in the kind of 80s and 90s and early 2000s. There was still this kind of idea that, you know, there'd be some kind of mass enlightenment moment and we'd all go, oh, isn't it wonderful, we all love each other and everything. But, well, kind of a fair amount of time before 2012 came around, I realised it wasn't going to be like that. And I thought it's probably going to be a little bit more kind of stress and conflict involved in it, because you don't raise your energy to a new quantum level without a bit of effort. And so that, since for every action there is equal and opposite reaction in this universe, that means there's probably going to be a bit of stress and conflict. So anyway, what is the good bit in the starseed transmissions is what I will read you just now, and you might find a certain correspondence with what we're going through. So here we go. So, as a collective event, the moment of birth is still a generation away, because this was written in the end of the 70s. But, individually speaking, the event transcends the limits of space and time and is in fact already occurring. It's kind of got to, you know, frame it in grandiose terms, but anyway, we'll get there. Your individual birth, and I think this is the birth of sovereignty, as my friend Annie would call it. Agency, it's the same thing. It's self-determination, free will. Your individual birth will take place at the precise moment in linear time when you stop struggling with your rational fear patterns and let yourself go in the divine dance of inner direction. Now, this has been interpreted by New Age gurus and followers to be a kind of, you know, divine surrender when all, you know, we'll all be one and everything like that. But I think it doesn't quite turn out like that, because we have here, it says, you must decide whether you are going to accept the inevitable in a state of love and prepare yourself accordingly, or hold on in fear to the bitter end. I mean, this is the people who are trying to deny that Trump's won the election. This is the people who are trying to deny Brexit, and I think forces will carry it beyond that. Anyway, prepare yourself accordingly, or hold on in fear to the bitter end. Ultimately, these are the only two avenues of response. By the linear time this event takes place, humanity will be polarised. We have it polarised. We've got the two, the nationalists versus the globalists. Polarised according to these two adaptive patterns. All will be decidedly in one camp or the other. I think that can be pretty clearly understood. There are a few who don't care, but, you know, they're really of no consequence, are they? Then, so the last paragraph I should be quoting, others, not so finely tuned to the forces that will be released at that time, will feel great surges of energy lasting for an indeterminate period. I've heard everybody say, oh, I just feel so energised, it's amazing. This is great. Some few will experience an intense fear, and it says here, many will die. I mean, I don't know if quite we're there yet, but there are definitely people who are going into kind of catatonic fear about this. Everything in physical form at this time, every soul in every kingdom will feel something incredible, something that according to all the laws of physics ever known or ever to be discovered could never happen. I mean, I think we can take this with a pinch of salt, but I think that there was a kind of something felt around the world that certainly these places like the Philippines, China, India, everybody was watching, everybody cared about it. And also, I like this bit, it says that something that according to all the laws of physics ever known or ever to be discovered could never happen. Well, I think if we just take that as a little bit of a kind of like how shall I say, it's kind of a metaphor, isn't it? It's not like it's physically impossible, but we were told it was impossible by all the media, the CNN, Clinton News Network, and all that lot who were trying to persuade us that it could never happen. All the laws of propaganda and news dissemination ever to be discovered could say that it could never happen. But there will be, before all senses, an impossible fact. It says, like the babe in the manger. I mean, yeah. Like the unmistakable feeling in your heart, an incredible vibration of truth and love, which is actually what I've heard, you know, people saying that they just feel like this is, you know, an opening to freedom. It's marvellous. Shimmering, scintillating, awakening every nerve, every capillary, every cell of your planetary body. I mean, of course they have to put the kind of you know, sci-fi kind of spin on it, but I would say, you know, turning that into more, you know, kind of mundane or metaphorical perhaps terms with your planetary body. I mean, I think that's the realization of sovereignty, individuality, agency. And so this is what all this is about. This is what all the whole Brexit, Trump, and then we see this is going to be happening throughout Europe. We're going to probably have an Italian challenge to the EU, some kind of referendum, because they've got their constitutional referendum coming up in a couple of weeks, I think, which is taken as a kind of proxy on actually on the EU. And then there's the Austrian presidential rerun, and so the dominoes keep going, and each one, if enough momentum can be reached, and if Marine Le Pen can win the French presidency next year in a similar way to the way that Trump defied all the odds, then we see this kind of singularity sucking in. It's like, well, in nature, you know, you talk about black holes as being a singularity. Once you've got a black hole, anything that gets near it will get sucked into it. And I think this is perhaps almost like a white hole, actually, because we're all being lit up by the inspiration of rediscovering individuality, individuation, and identity, sovereignty, agency. This is true enlightenment, you know, not the kind of fake quasi enlightenment that we're kind of, you know, being taught since the 60s, this fake view of Buddhism, that it's all, sweetness and light, and we'll all dance off with the fairies. Really, it's far more about facing reality and accepting the really difficult nature of the conflict and the decisions that we have to make at the moment, and the wonderful joy of realising that we have, God, it was by the skin of our teeth in both times, because we both feel, I'm sure we all feel, that it's highly likely that a lot of votes were lost to fraud. But both times there was enough strength of feeling to pull us over the line in the ways that counted with the different types of vote that were carried out. And so people like my friend from the Socialist Workers' Party, I think, unfortunately, they are in this kind of intense fear. They're kind of imagining things. One of the things she was talking about was she was saying, oh, but, the KKK. So I'm going like, what? KKK? Ku Klux Klan? She said. So I said, well, David Duke's a fairly minor figure, and he gave up the Ku Klux Klan 40 years ago. So it's like really, really minor kind of thing. And I haven't even heard any hardly mention of this kind of stuff. It's really stuff which has no substance and is just bandied about. This guy who is a fringe supporter of Trump sort of has something to do with the Ku Klux Klan when he was like 19, and now he's in his 60s. And in the meantime, somewhere in between the 40 years intervening, he's been a congressman and had a professional career and stuff. But no, what he did when he was 19 should smear Trump, and Trump's being controlled. We get this whole kind of narrative, with Steve Bannon is some kind of anti-Semitic, far-right, blah, blah. Yes, I'm sure you've all seen those things on the news in the last couple of days, so I won't go on about that. But so this is it's like an outpouring of all the poison that's built up, and people are kind of swimming in this fear fantasy. People used to call it fear porn. They're kind of fascinated by this fear of this complete fantasy that's really just the projection of their own anxieties, which bears no resemblance to actual reality out there, and they're completely blind to all the dreadful things about the Clinton family, and how that they could imagine that having somebody of this degree of corruption in would be better than somebody with sensible nationalist policies. Shows how mad it has all become. But I think that whether Ken Carey or the inspiring whatever, whatever they intended this to be, whether it was just a kind of prophetic allegory that this is a kind of pattern which might be repeated again at future times, or whether they're just referring to one event. I think it's a kind of process, because I think these kind of major world transformations like this, it can be interpreted as taking place in one moment, and I just don't think that's possible. When you've got to kind of change the whole consciousness of the planet, it's going to take, it's going to take a while to build up, and then the process will work through, and that process is individuation, sovereign awareness, and agency, and expressing itself in autonomous national governments which are able to resist the globalist hegemony of the false world government, which has been which is being attempted to be imposed on us by the corporate oligarchies, which run so much of the planet, but which have found that they don't run everything. And the providence, I think Tolkien would call it, providence has allowed us the opportunity of these votes, and I think if the Democrats hadn't been so stupid in choosing such a bad candidate, well, obviously they didn't choose, she chose herself for them. These events have come together through some phenomenal chances. It's like an arrow being shot through the eye of a needle, or I think there was an example in the Odyssey when Odysseus returns and he shoots an arrow through I can't remember exactly what it is he shoots them through, but it's like a line of holes that he has to shoot the arrow absolutely perfectly through, and cannot risk any deviation, and this is what we seem to be managing to do. So I have great hopes for what will happen in Europe in the coming year, because there's quite a few elections. But principally, what I'm talking about today is this psychological process that people have been going through, and I think that this will be something that will have its kind of longer term effects on the geopsychology, if I can use that term. We see these European politicians saying dreadful things about Donald Trump, and it's like they're kind of, they don't to quote Tolkien, to quote Aragorn on the battlement of Helm's Deep, talking to the orcs, "You do not know your peril. You do not know your peril." These European unelected officials like Juncker and Tusk, they're speaking to Trump a bit like a Parthian chieftain would speak to the Roman Emperor. The Roman Emperor is going like, "What? Okay, I'm the Roman Emperor. You're some Parthian chieftain or something, or you're some outlying Scythian tribe, or somebody's kind of coming across the steppes with a band of nomads." It's like, look, I'm the Roman Emperor, Come on, guys. Face up to it. You need to accept that this is reality. So this is a fascinating kind of thing I'm psychologically observing the world at the moment, because we've still got this thing they're having last try with to stop Brexit with Blair and Branson and stuff, and well, they're making a pretty good go at it, but I'm quite convinced that it won't work, because at the very least, even if they do manage to stymie Brexit, then the whole EU thing is falling apart, and I'm quite convinced that Trump will do all that he can to bring about the end of the EU in as gentlemanly a way as is reasonably possible. But quite obviously, look, Farage was the first foreigner, I think, certainly first person from Britain to speak to Trump after he had been elected, and the rest are all down the queue. Even Prime Minister Theresa May, they're all down the queue. So it's like, okay, Donald Trump doesn't waste time. He's a businessman. He does business. He likes to get things done. And he's not going to spend more than 5 minutes with Farage saying what a jolly good fun it was and how they slap each other on the back and everything. Get that 5 minutes over, and then it's like, okay, Nigel, how are we going to fix this for you? I see you have a bit of trouble over in Brexit. We've got this fixed now here. What are we going to do for you over there? Do you think they didn't talk about that? Do these guys, do Tusk and Juncker, do they really think that Trump, he's already killed the TP, is it the Trans-Pacific Partnership? That's dead, right? It's going to stop the moment he gets into the White House. And the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership, the TTIP, that's also looking pretty dead, partly from Brexit and partly from, obviously, the fact it's a lesser thing to America than the Trans-Pacific thing, but it'll also go the same way. So that's you know, knocking back this corporatism, globalism stuff. So I think these people, there's just like, I've heard Trump described as being like playing 4-dimensional chess, not 3-dimensional chess, 4-dimensional chess, and you can see this in the way that he plays the media. He gets them to promote his own ideas by saying things in such a way that they try and correct him and things, or they don't understand what he's said, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted that there are still people saying Trump is a buffoon, Trump is a... No, hang on. This guy outsmarted everybody. He outsmarted 17 rival candidates. He outsmarted the GOP neocon establishment. He outsmarted the Bushes. He outsmarted the Democrat Party. He outsmarted the Clintons. He outsmarted CNN. He outsmarted CBS. All the rest of them, and he's now president-elect. And people are still calling him a buffoon and an idiot. This is just such staggering blindness that one kind of, well, it kind of gives one encouragement actually, because these people, they're not on the page of what's actually happening. So I think they're going to be like these people who will experience an intense fear. They are experiencing intense fear because they have a completely wrong model of reality. That's what it's about. There's the cognitive dissonance between reality asserting itself and unreality, which is the cultural Marxist view of globalist uniformity, breaking down of all barriers. So it's quite an entertaining time at the moment, and I'm looking forward to it developing quite nicely. So thanks for watching, folks, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers, thanks for watching, bye. Oh, hello everybody, I'm Claire and welcome to my video blog. I'm sorry I've been away for a little while, but there was that week of extreme excitement, which I shall be referring to, and then after that I came down with the flu. I was so exhausted, so forgive me for taking a while to get here, and hi there Mr. Cool Mug, thanks for the encouragement. Now, obviously the excitement I'm referring to is the election of Donald Trump. I did believe that he would win, and I actually put a few quid on at the bookies, which I kind of thought of as a magical hour. I went into the fruit and veg shop up the way here, and I bumped into this lady I know who is a member of the Socialist Workers' Party, and we fought side by side on the Stop the Trolley Bus campaign, and I'm very happy to say that we won that. But I'd never really expressed any of my feelings about more about political matters further afield of the national and international nature. And her being an international communist, obviously she's not very keen on people expressing nationalist ideas. So what happened was, I was standing there at the fruit and veg, and I'm just choosing, my courgettes and my lemons and everything, and she comes into the shop, and I say, "Oh, hi there," and she says, "Oh, hello," and I say, "Oh, everything all right?" Yeah. Oh dear, I shouldn't have said that. You always say the wrong things, don't you? So she said, "Oh yes, all right, except for what happened on Wednesday." And I was like, "Oh yeah." So what was that then? She said, "Oh," and she's starting to get a little bit wondering that I might not quite be on the same page as her. And she says, "Oh, you don't think?" I actually said so to a friend of mine, and she's a Christian, and so I hope that didn't seem too outlandish a thought for her, that I should be making a magical act of affirmation by putting a few quid on Donald Trump to win. But it paid off, fortunately, and the same as with Brexit. And the thing is, what's really interesting is that we've been hearing so many people in the mainstream media saying, no one expected this, this was completely... And I'm thinking, well, this is obviously... In their world it wasn't expected, but obviously there was an alternate world where it was worked for very hard, and it was a hard one, and congratulations to the Donald and to everybody who fought for this. Now, what I really want to draw attention to today is the psychological reactions that people have been having to it. Obviously there's been the kind of mass weep-ins, and the demonstrations and the violence, and this is all based on kind of apprehension, misapprehension, fear and so forth. And I had an episode just a few days after the result came out, which was a little bit like my Brexit experience, because it was very close by, and